Welcome to this explainer of Dave Ramsey's proven plan for financial fitness. Today, we're going to unpack a super fascinating perspective from the source material. It's this idea that wealth building is actually way less about complex math and almost entirely about changing your daily habits. If you've ever felt totally overwhelmed by dense financial jargon, I promise you this breakdown is going to be incredibly refreshing.
Okay, so let's dive right into this massive paradigm shift. The absolute core philosophy driving this entire approach is that personal finance is 80% behavior and only 20% head knowledge. Think about that for a second. Most financial experts make the mistake of just throwing complex numbers at you, assuming you simply don't understand the math. But the source argues that most folks actually have a pretty good idea of what they should be doing with their money, they just really struggle with the execution. The missing ingredient isn't a better calculator, it's behavior modification.
Which brings us perfectly to this incredibly blunt yet super powerful quote right out of the text. I am sure that the problem with my money is the guy in my mirror. The author points out that the actual math of wealth building simply isn't rocket science. It's actually quite simple. But you have to actually do it. If the person looking back at you in the mirror behaves, the money thing works. It's a direct, no-nonsense challenge to take absolute personal accountability for your financial situation. Section 1. What this plan is not. Sometimes understanding what we're stepping away from is just as crucial as knowing where we're going. And in this case, we are stepping far, far away from the usual financial arrogance we see all the time in our culture. Notice the really stark contrast here. On one side, we've got what our culture usually worships, the sophisticated, the ultra-complicated, or what the author hilariously calls boring academic chirping, pushed by financial goobers who really just want to justify their own existence. But on the flip side, we have the actual core of this plan, common sense, totally doable actions. Basically, it's the exact same financial advice your grandmother would give you. The text highlights that many wealthy people, including a multimillionaire friend of the author, keep their investing philosophies beautifully uncomplicated. Simple ideas aren't just for the quote-unquote little people. They are profoundly effective. Now, naturally, taking such a blunt, anti-establishment stance is going to draw some fire. The text explains that the author gets a ton of hate mail and criticism for this straightforward approach. But rather than hiding from it, he actually embraces it. He views all this negativity as a sure sign that he's passionately pursuing the truth. Touching a nerve is often absolutely necessary for people to finally wake up and change their lives. As they say, if no one is upset, you probably aren't really challenging the status quo. And how does he respond to those critics who demand to see his fancy academic credentials? Well, he proudly claims a PhD in DUMB. Yeah, you heard that right. While he actually does hold a finance degree and various licenses, the author argues that those aren't his true qualifications. Instead, his real credibility comes from his own incredibly painful experience of going completely broke, having his marriage hang by a thread from all that financial stress, and doing stupid with zeros on the end. Surviving that massive pain and successfully rebuilding his wealth using these exact principles is what uniquely qualifies him to help others who are hurting right now. Section 2, the three little pigs and real economic storms. So the crucial point we need to look at is how these individual financial behaviors we've been talking about, when you scale them up to millions of people, can create massive systemic issues. We aren't just talking about personal bank accounts anymore. We are talking about the entire economy. To explain this, the author pulls out a classic childhood allegory his grandmother used to read to him, The Three Little Pigs. Two of the pigs built their houses quick and dirty, making fun of the brother who actually took the time and effort to lay a solid brick foundation. But when the wind and rains came, only the brick house survived. The author uses this story to perfectly illustrate what happens when short-term thinking, that desire for instant gratification, and a total lack of preparation meet the harsh reality of a real economic storm. Let's walk through the domino effect of the 2008 crash step by step, because it fits this perfectly. Step 1. Individuals in deep financial trouble took on high-risk, subprime debt. Step 2. Greedy loan sharks and investment bankers packaged those bad loans together and sold them off as bonds. Step 3. When people inevitably couldn't make their ridiculous payments, foreclosures skyrocketed, which dragged down home values for absolutely everyone. And finally, Step 4. That localized fear hit Wall Street, turned into an absolute panic in Washington, and caused widespread economic hysteria. It's literally the Three Little Pigs story playing out on a massive, terrifying scale. But there is a silver lining here. Just as the Great Depression permanently changed a whole generation's view of saving and debt, surviving this recent economic collapse provided a really painful but deeply valuable experience for many. The text quotes a pastor who said, "A man with an experience is not at the mercy of a man with an opinion." Living through an economic storm and feeling that visceral fear teaches you lessons about building a solid financial foundation that an academic opinion simply cannot erase.
Section 3, the 12% debate. Let's shift gears and dig into one of the most hotly debated claims in this entire explainer, the actual mathematical expectations behind long-term investing. Because hey, once you fix your behavior, you really need to know where to put your money. The text confidently and very boldly states that you should expect to make a 12% rate of return on your money over time by using good growth stock-type mutual funds. Now, this single number draws intense criticism. The author notes that many intelligent but ignorant people claim a 12% long-term return is simply impossible, going so far as to accuse him of misleading the public. But if we look at the historical data, it actually fiercely backs him up. The S&P 500, which is widely regarded as the absolute best gauge of the U.S. stock market, has averaged nearly 12%, 11.67% to be exact, for over 80 years. And yes, that includes the massive drops in the market. Furthermore, the author points to specific funds he personally invests in, one that has averaged 12.03% since 1934, another tracking at 13.9% since 1973, and yet another at 12.01% since 1984. The big takeaway here is that when you're looking at investments across a decade or longer, a 12% return is historically supported, completely regardless of the noise the critics make.
Moving on to Section 4, Changing Your Family Tree. Let's look at the ultimate why behind adopting these time-honored truths. Why go through all the trouble of facing the mirror, ignoring the financial snobs, and totally restructuring your investments?
Because as the source so eloquently puts it, when you change your life, you really change your life. This entire process is about so much more than just mathematics. It's about a complete, total transformation. It fundamentally affects your emotional well-being by removing that suffocating weight of debt. It transforms your marriage and your relationships by eliminating constant financial stress. And ultimately, it positions you to give to others and invest in the future at an unbelievable rate. You are essentially changing your family tree for generations to come.
Millions of families have already used these straightforward, no-nonsense principles to find the courage to face the person in the mirror, change their behavior, and achieve true financial fitness. The principles absolutely stand, and according to the text, they work every single time. So, having seen the breakdown of this proven plan, the only question left to ask yourself is, are you next?